Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Mrs. Taylor, and we're back for summer math video number 2. This video is going to be on working with linear equations. So finding slope, y-intercept, graphing, finding the slope from a graph. And by the way, you might hear some banging in the background. We are currently unlocking a legacy. This is June 8th, and the lockers on the first floor math hallway are being ripped out today. So this should be exciting to see the new ones come in. So we're going to start out with some reminders. And reminders, we use the phrase rise over run to signify the slope of an equation or a slope of a line. So we talk about how many units up does a line go over, how many lines over does that go. So we have y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1 is how we're going to calculate that if we know the actual 2 points. If we're just given a line, we're going to have to count to figure out what the slope is. We use the phrase slope-intercept form, and that's y equals mx plus b. And as a reminder, m is always going to be the slope in this particular case, and b is going to be the y-intercept. And then we also will be given equations in point-slope form that we have to transform over into slope-intercept form, or maybe we'll be asked to give the equation of a line in point-slope form. And in this particular case, we have y minus y1 equals m times the quantity of x minus x1, where x1, y1 is a point and m is the slope. So it might be a good idea to pause this slide and just jot this down so that you have this handy. Remember, these reminders are set up to help you succeed in taking these quizzes that you're going to do. So our first problem starts out nice and slow. It wants us to find the slope of the 2 given lines. So we'll start with the red line, and I've put points on lattices. Lattices are where the 2 grid lines cross. So that's not a lattice. I should probably calibrate my smartboard. So the lattice would be underneath there. Oh, for crying out loud. There's a lattice. All right. So I've got some lattices marked. So I need to figure out, remember, slope is rise over run. So I'm going to start with my rise. How much is it going up? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So my rise is 5, and my run is 1, 2 to the right, which is positive. So 5 over 2. My slope for the red line is 5 over 2. The slope for the blue line, okay, so working from left to right, I'm going to go down. So I say 1, 2, 3, 4. Because I went down, the slope for my blue line is negative. So my rise for my blue line is -4, and my run is 1, 2, so -4 over 2. Anytime we're dealing with fractions, we want to present the reduced version of the fraction. So -4 over 2 reduces to -2. So the slope of the blue line is -2. Remember, you might want to go watch the slope dude video. We have puff, puff, positive. So the red line is a positive slope. Remember, he's going up the hill, puff, puff, positive, puff, puff, positive. And then the blue one is nice, negative. He's going down the hill. So that's a reminder for that. Now we need to write the equation of the line going through the point. So we have a point of 9, 3 and a slope of 1/3. So I think about what I've got, and I come back here and I go, oh, I have a point and a slope. So I'm going to use that formula right there. I'm going to use the point slope formula because that uses everything that I have. So I'm going to say my original formula, point slope formula, was y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. This is x1, this is y1. And it does tell me that I need to write it in slope-intercept form. That's y equals mx plus b. So let's see. Let's fill in what I've got. So I know that y1 is 3. I know that my slope is 1/3, and I know that x1 is 9. So I'm filling in the things that I know. But now that's not the form that it wants it in. It wants it to be presented to us in this format. So in order to get that into that format, I'm going to have to distribute this into the set of parentheses, and I'm going to have to move this to over here. Okay, so how do we do that? Well, y minus 3, 1/3 times, all right, so I'm going to distribute this first. So when I distribute that, I end up with 1/3 x minus 1/3 times 9. Well, it might be easier for me to set that up like that, and I can say, okay, well, this goes into there 3 times, so I end up with 1 times 3 over 1 times 1. So it's y minus 3 equals 1/3 x minus 3. Okay, now I need to move this 3 over to the other side. So I'm going to add 3 here, and I'm going to add 3 here. So the equation of my line in slope-intercept form is y equals 1/3 x plus 0. I don't need to write plus 0, but that is my final answer. And one of the things that I'm going to do is I'm going to think about, is that the answer to the question that was given to me? It wants it in slope-intercept form, and I've got y equals, so y is by itself. I've got my slope and my x, and my y-intercept isn't listed, but in this case, it's just 0. So that is the final answer for this one. We need to write the equation of the line going through the points 9, 3, and -1, 5. Well, I come back here to this very helpful slide, and I think I don't have either one of those. I don't have this. I don't have a y-intercept and a slope, and I have a point, but I don't have a slope for this one. All right, so this is where things get crazy because I'm going to have to use this, and then once I find out what m is, I can plug it into this equation right here, and then transform that equation into this thing over here. Holy guacamole, but I promise it's not that big of a deal. I just want you to know the sequence of events. So let's come back up here, and the first thing that we're going to have to do is figure out what my slope is. I'm going to come over here and say this is x1, and this is y1, and this is x2, and this is y2. You will need to know this. This is something that we do multiple times in geometry. So don't blow this off. This is a skill that we need to remember. And by the way, it's not just something that we use in geometry. We will use it continually throughout our math lives. Okay, so we remember that the equation of slope is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So the slope that connects these 2 points is going to be, well, y2 is 5, minus y1 is 3, x2 is -1, and x1 is 9. So now we just need to finish this up. 5 minus 3 is, oh, that's not quite right. 5 minus 3 is 2, and then -1 minus 9 gives me -10. That is not my final answer. It's not in reduced format. So I'm going to say that my slope is -1 over 5. Okay. I'm going to take all of this stuff and I'm just going to reduce it. I want you to have access to it, but I'm going to do this. We're going to hold on to this slope because that's the important thing. The next thing that we're going to do is plug that into my slope, my point slope form. Point slope form is y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. All right, let's plug in what I know. It does not matter which of the 2 points that I'm going to work with, but I like the fact that I don't have to do anything funky with the signs for this one. So that's what I'm going to work with. So it becomes y minus 3 equals x, equals m, which is negative 1/5, times the quantity of x minus x1, and x1 is 9. I like the way I label these things because it makes it very easy to go through and plug things in. Now I need to do some ugly math and distribute and move that negative 3 to the other side. So I'm going to say y minus 3 equals negative 1/5 x. Negative times a negative is always going to give me a positive. So I'm going to say plus 1/5 times 9. I'm going to multiply 1/5 times 9, and that's going to give me 9/5. All right, from here, I need to add this 3 to both sides. I need to move that over. So now I have y equals negative 1/5 x, and then I've got this stuff. Well, you've already done the how to add fractions thing. So I need to get this to have a common denominator of 5. So 3 is 3/1, and I need to get it over 5. So I'm going to say that this is, I need to multiply the denominator by 5, which means I'm also going to multiply the numerator by 5. Okay, so I have plus 9/5 plus, this becomes 3 times 5 is 15/5. And now we're going to tidy everything up. Y equals negative 1/5 x. I've got a common denominator, so my answer is going to be over 5. 9 plus 15 is 24. There is no number that goes into both 24 and 5 other than 1. This is my final answer. It wanted it in slope-intercept form, and that is the final form of the answer. All right, we need to answer the following questions using the equation y equals negative 1/2 times the quantity of x plus 6. And it says write the equation in slope-intercept form, and you probably look at that and go, but it is in slope-intercept form. But the fact of the matter is it's not in slope-intercept form. The way it is now, most closely matches this format, which is actually point slope form. So that's not the way we want it. In order to get it in slope intercept form, I need to distribute that 1/2 into the equation, or into the set of parentheses. So I'm going to end up with y equals negative 1/2 x. Negative 1/2 times positive 6. A positive times a negative is going to give me a negative number. 6 times 1/2 gives me 3. So this is the answer. Y equals negative 1/2 x minus 3. And then it says, what's the slope of the line parallel to this line that I've already given you? Well, parallel lines are going to have the same slope. So if I know that the slope of this line is negative 1/2, then I know that the slope of the parallel line is going to be also negative 1/2. And then it says, what's the slope of the line that's perpendicular to the given line? And that's tricky. And we always kind of struggle with, how do I know what that slope is? Well, there's a phrase that we learn and then promptly forget, but that phrase, it's the opposite reciprocal. Reciprocal means upside down. It means to flip. So we're going to flip that fraction. So the slope of my perpendicular, remember that's the shorthand for perpendicular, well, we're going to flip the fraction. So if I have 1/2, it becomes 2. And the opposite part refers to the sign. Because I have a negative number here, this is going to be positive. Okay, so the perpendicular line has a slope of 2. So the parallel line has a slope of negative 1/2, and the perpendicular line has a slope of 2. And I think that, oh, nope, we have one. So we need to find the value of y so that the line through the 2 points has a slope of 5/9. So we have some slope that's 5/9. We also know that the equation for slope is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And because I know that m equals both of those things, I can actually say 5 over 9 equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So let's plug in some stuff. I'm going to come over here and label this x1, y1, and I'm going to label this x2, oh, working in my shadow, and this is y2. So now I'm going to plug things in. I have 5 over 9 equals, well, y2, I've got y2 labeled, is the label that I put on y, so I'm going to plug in y, minus y1 is 14, and that's going to go over, I have x2 labeled as -1. That was supposed to be in green, but we're not going to get hung up on that. And x1 is labeled as -10. I've got minus, but when I put in that -10, it makes this a plus, so I end up with -1 plus 10. All right, let's simplify this. I'm going to bring this over here and say that 5 over 9 equals y minus 14 over -1 plus 10 is 9. So I'm going to cross multiply. Now, some of you are looking at this and go, well, they both have the same denominator, which means that y minus 14 has to equal 5. And that's true for this case, but what if it's not true on your quiz? So I'm going to cross multiply. I'm going to multiply 5 times 9 and 9 times y minus 4. And I'm going to remember to put this in parentheses. So 5 times 9 is 45. And 9 times y minus 14 is going to simplify to 9y minus, I don't know what that is. 6 carry the 3, 126. All right. I got to solve for y, which means I have to get everything that isn't y on the other side of the equal sign. So I'm going to add 126 to both sides. So I end up with 9y equals 171. Now I have to divide both sides by 9. I don't know what that is. I got to come off to the side. So y equals 19. And it wants to know what the value of y is. So y is 19. All right, go take that quiz and crush it. See me back for another video.